A person watches a war film. For years, he is satisfied. Until one day, he has to make an internet video about it. And afterward, some like, some subscribe. Others smash that bell like they own that shit. And he believes the video is done. But no matter his belief, that video was just beginning. In 1995, 24-year-old retired Marine Scout sniper Anthony Swofford began a career in writing that ultimately culminated in him serving as an English professor at Lewis and Clark College. Released March 4th, 2003, Jarhead is a semi-autobiographical novel retelling of Swofford's experience as a Marine Scout sniper in the First Gulf War. He sold the film rights and it became a film directed by one of my favorite directors, Sam Mendes. Released November 4th, 2005. The book is brash, unflinching, and features unapologetically blue language that many will find challenging. It's also written beautifully. Since the book originally came out, it has been challenged by many, especially soldiers, for its portrayal of American soldiers and the authenticity of events portrayed. And I'm really just trying to stay agnostic here. I have no opinion on the authenticity of the book. I think it's a great book. That's all. I'm here to explore the movie. The film uses Vietnam movies, Apocalypse Now, Deer Hunter, and shows us how the soldiers worship them. Mendes set out to make the 90s war film, one where the restrictions and the modern regulations of war create something new. A new model of frustration, not born out of the ugliness of war, though that is still 100% there, but born out of the modern soldier's fight. Boredom, oversight, and permission mixed with a bloodlust. Let me put that another way. What happens when an entity files people down into little more than killing machines, and then walks them up to the edge and defies them that for which they were created? I think Jarhead is a masterpiece that came and went. Welcome to the suck. Jarhead was a 2005 film directed by Sam Mendes, whose previous two outings in cinema were American Beauty and Road to Perdition. Hey, I did an episode on one of those. And it was written by William Broyles Jr., who wrote Castaway, Apollo 13, The Polar Express, and also some non-Tom Hanks vehicles, like the 2001 Tim Burton film, Planet of the Apes. Yeah, I think Sam Mendes is the director I most want to have a beer with, honestly. Maybe a few. Okay, really, I want to get him drunk and to spill all his secrets. Road to Perdition was the last film that legendary cinematographer Conrad Hall lensed, and Jarhead was the follow-up film where Sam Mendes started working with... I wrote this where it's Roger Deakins. Here's a huge statement. No one in Hollywood has ever been better at their job than Roger Deakins. Here, I'll go in further. Name a film lensed by Deakins that doesn't look incredible. And I'm pretty happy to report that the last time he shot a movie that looked okay was Air America. Anyway, back to Jarhead, a film that Roger Deakins shot the fuck out of. This film is a masterpiece that came and went, and I totally understand why. It's challenging and it pissed a lot of people off when they left the theater by creating the very bloodlust in the audience that the soldiers experience watching Apocalypse Now. Its central function was to deny you that which you expect and desire. That is my kill! That is my kill! Generally, war films have fans because they have fighting in them, a war. This film, about a Marine Scout sniper who fires his gun before the war and directly after it, but never during it or at anyone. Over the course of the film, the men in the unit lose their flavor-blasted minds as they're pushed to the limits of their being. The movie pushes them over the edge anyway because that was the point. Anthony Swofford, our author here, Jake Gyllenhaal, who is playing a semi or moderately fictionalized version of said author, written by the author and adapted by William Broyles Jr.
Confused? You won't be.
Swoff begins the film already in the Marines at boot camp, where he brings us up to speed about his familial history of mental illness that will foreshadow his own plot, a plot thread that is both not dropped and never resolved. I'm making a case for this being a masterpiece because here's something that the film is absolutely saying, whether it was intentional or not. The soldiers in this film start exhibiting signs of PTSD from their broken homes and their irrational upbringings from their childhoods in the war. That's what this story does. Part of the pursuit of this film is to establish a modern context for a war film to exist. I feel like The Hurt Locker is a beautiful spiritual sequel to both this film and this war. And unlike the actual sequels to Jarhead, which are abhorrent, and we're not talking about those right now, and I really should just make a video about them in the future because they're pretty tone deaf. But there's this scene in Hurt Locker at the end where Sergeant First Class William James, after coming back from a tour of Iraq where a lot happens, is responsible for selecting cereal. That's it. Cereal.
You want to go get us some cereal and I'll meet you at the checkout?
Okay.
And it is flat out overwhelming to him. Not least of which is that this decision does not matter. A soldier in the shit will have a perspective on normal life that a civilian doesn't have simple access to because in the grand scheme of possible human existence, cereal doesn't f***ing matter. It's paralyzing in its insignificance. I'm illustrating the connective tissue of modern war films dissecting a soldier's experience through the juxtaposition of an uncaring home front opiated with pop culture. The disconnect of acceptance back to society and the question of whether or not it's even worth it to do so because civilians are always popping off on that cereal shit. Got him. Swoff is coyly pulled aside into Sykes' Scout Sniper program and it's off to war, where the mundanity of modern combat in a war that moves at the speed of the aircraft ends up inevitably leaving the ground troops behind, engendering understandable frustration within the soldiers. When Desert Shield became Desert Storm, all of the troops believe that something is about to happen, and for the most part, the thing that's happening is that their psychological health is fraying, but still no combat. In the oil fields, things get tranquil, peaceful, and beautifully surreal. Cheddar Bob, who is also possibly a psychopath, earns a court-martial and is back out into the world again. After waiting and being disappointed repeatedly over the entire film, expecting to see some combat and getting none, essentially our two main characters, Swoff and Troy, they get a mission right at the end with a kill order attached to it. It is of course taken away right at the moment it was going to happen by President David Palmer. What? My president? This breaks Troy, who it should be noted was dealing with being barred from re-enlisting because the Marines discovered some never iterated on criminal past. He was the rock for the men around him this entire film, and he just shatters. You file people down to believe in the pursuit of one single violent thing, the pink mist. Expect some issues when they are denied that one violent thing. And to add insult to injury, especially for the audience, the big climactic explosion of the entire film is seen only through the reflection in the window, because you're denied that too, and then the war is over. They go home and try to rejoin the world, and it doesn't take for Troy. The end. It's basically a cliche at this point to point out that Vietnam had the best music, and I love CCR as much as the next person, but the protests against the Vietnam War are a different breed. Operation Desert Shield, a war that predates Jurassic Park by 3 years, didn't have much of a musical identity to speak of, especially cinematically compared to Vietnam. Jarhead musical curveball number 1. Don't Worry, Be Happy by Bobby McFerrin, a song that makes the case for dealing with whatever horrible shenanigans the world screws you over with your head held high and a smile on your face. Here's the thing, No one in this film is really all that happy, save for Staff Sergeant Sykes, played beautifully by Jamie Foxx, by the way, who reveals he could have a fairly affluent back home with a company truck and ample air conditioning, but his heart is in the Marines. A common thread, and I believe these men are happy together, or at least think they are. But they aren't super functional on the whole, and for large parts of the film could not interact with a modern society. Something in the way. A song ostensibly about a pescatarian who lives under a bridge and traps animals to keep as pets. A song by an artist who killed themselves. That's not an accident. The musical identity of this film, and by proxy, the time period of Desert Storm and Desert Shield, is Nirvana, or Naughty by Nature, or Public Enemy, or Tom Waits. I sense a pattern of counterculture. Hell, Bobby McFerrin's Don't Worry Be Happy was the first a cappella track to ever reach the #1 spot in the Billboard charts. 1990s counterculture. There's a musical identity on display here, and it's one darker and less celebratory than its Southern rock predecessors. Early on in the film, when the Marines, not yet in war, watch Apocalypse Now in the on-base theater, glorifying and actively rooting for violence against not just innocent civilians, but also children, to the tune of Flight of the Valkyries. They sing along, they cheer it on. They need this, they want this. These are the soldiers that essentially were broken down psychologically and built back up into killers. An explicit point the film makes from the first moment they were in boot camp.
Do you have a girlfriend, Swofford? Sir, yes, sir! Yes, again, motherfucker! Jody's banging her right now!
Which is why a lot of people complained about this very pointed R. Lee Ermey-esque drill instructor. It's setting the tone of the expected war film so it can quickly subvert that expectation. But this film sits alongside Full Metal Jacket, saying some similar things we as a society need to hear over and over and over about our brave service members, and does entirely new things as well. War films, when not jingoistic propaganda, are art to help the rest of the population understand not just why war is sometimes the option you have on the table, but helping to understand our veterans and active service members now. Art is a great tool for explaining emotions that don't have exact explanations, that can lead people to large and entirely selfless acts. Selfless things that can have severe mental and physical consequences we should be eager, able, and willing to help bear the burden of. Mendes in this film provides a great blueprint for how to think about modern conversations about war. Except for that whole Metroid conversation. Can we just not?
Playing Metroid, trying to get to that 9th level.
You know what happens when you get there? Nothing. Just start all over again.
No. I am making the case that this film carves out an understandable identity of frustration, boredom, confusion, and madness that did not live up to a lot of soldiers' expectations of it. We sold them Vietnam, and we gave them nothing. Oh hey, Jim Halpert's in this movie. Yeah, it's not a segue. I talked to a few Marines for this piece because I wanted to get perspective other than the Uncle Mikey's patented drop the black and white and find something meaningful to say ending thing. I indeed have friends and multiple family members that are both active duty Marines and Army. It's not a subject I take lightly. One of my fears was confirmed immediately. Watching Jarhead with a Marine is like watching Grey's Anatomy with a doctor. Don't do it. Hollywood is never going to be accurate enough for any industry professional. That's not a knock against Marines. It's literally everyone watching anything with a profession in it. I mean, don't watch any media where the characters in the show have to make video games. Don't do that around me, because sweet good God Lord is bad. I was interested in the larger pieces of the puzzle. All the Marines I talked to thought the language was definitely toned down, which for some reason I wasn't expecting, but makes sense. I had an extended conversation with Sarah Campbell, formerly a corporal in the Marines, and she had a lot to say, and a lot of it helped me kind of mold parts of this piece, but I wanted to focus on one passage that I've been saving from our conversation as she talked to me about every aspect of the film and the book and being a Marine. Sarah said this. there's been a realization that the United States Marine Corps maybe needs to give tools to do things other than kill, and is still figuring out what that looks like. We have to muddle our own way through reconciling the world and the culture of the Marine Corps with the civilian one. And it's a lot like reminding yourself of a language you forgot how to speak. At the end of the movie, Swofford's grief over Troy's death is only part of the loss he's grieving. Among the many phrases the Corps love to throw around, once a Marine, always a Marine. And that's well known. And I think most folks read the pride in that statement. And that's certainly part of it. Another part, though, is that once you've earned and lived through that shit, you never stop. Part of you will always be out there in the suck. I, first of all, can't believe I landed an episode shorter than 20 minutes. Go me. Where's my prize? Zach Marsh and Alex Podgorski and, of course, John. Now to get serious. No, I did quite a bit of research, talked to a lot of people. I really wanted this to represent a very key theme, and this film is very much about soldiers' mental health and how different things can affect them, especially in the modern context. I don't know, it's just something I really wanted to focus on, and I think we in the world need to do right by our armed services in every country. So from me, thank you for your service, and a super, super special thank you to Sarah Campbell, who ended up influencing this piece quite a lot. I was mostly asking her kind of general questions, but she had really good answers to all the questions, and I couldn't have done it without her. Also, couldn't have done it without Andrew Hackert or Michael Howie or Joshua Jameson or Hyundu Tao or John Erickson or Damien. I do this every time. Hey, follow me on Twitter at MikeyFace. I'm pretty good. Pretty good boy, this boy. As I move the mic, that's super pro. Just like move your entire mic setup during the recording. Couldn't even hear it. It's totally invisible, this process. Sub to the channel, like this video. We're doing really good. 2018 was the year I wanted to come out swinging, and it seems to be still be working. We're still going strong. I really thought this every 2 weeks thing was gonna kill me, but it did. I'm dead. I'm a ghost. Hello, welcome to Movies with Ghost, Mikey. Brought to you by the wonderful patronage of Matt Charles, Aaron DeBerry, Brady Altop, Justin Holt, Girish Menon, Joseph Cabo, Aaron Paquette, Terrible Plan, Ethan Fan, Benjamin A. Straub. I don't really have anything else to say. I love you all. I love all my supporters. I love all my fans. This is awesome. I gotta do what I want to do for a living, and that's super fun. But it's not as fun as walrus. A word I have to say right up on the microphone every time, or it doesn't count, and you get a whammy. Because Movies with Mikey is now on Press Your Luck rules. No whammy. No whammy. Stop!